What's up, guys? For today's video, I found something pretty interesting. This is probably going to be a pretty heated video. I found a video on the CBC. It's a popular news outlet here in Canada for any of you non-Canadians. And they basically got two Airbnb hosts and property owners and two renters to sit down at a round table and share their thoughts on how Airbnb plays a role into the housing crisis here in Canada, rising rent costs, lack of affordable housing, that sort of thing. So very, very different sides of the spectrum, with two people being real estate investors who own short-term rental properties, Airbnbs, and two people being renters who are having a tough time finding affordable places to live. So as personally, I rent where I own and I invest in properties that generate income. I like the freedom that renting gives me, so I stay as a renter, and I recommend that to a lot of people. Maybe I'll do another video breaking that down and sharing my thoughts on that. But as both a real estate investor and someone who rents the place they live in, I feel like I'll have a very interesting take on the two sides of the coin here. And I'm just excited to jump in and kind of understand both sides of the equation and see where I maybe agree or disagree with certain points that get brought up. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right in. I'm sure this is going to be a pretty interesting video.
If this keeps happening, I'm gonna move out of the city for sure, but potentially move out of the country.
I would sort of exploit something that I view as a basic human right. You're paying more for your bread and food, your gas, why not paying more for your rent, and you expect me to fork up that money, right?
I want to pay down my mortgage. I want to, be able to get ahead. We cannot let the market go to the Wild West. So facts, Canadians are struggling to find housing. That's not news to you. It's a matter of affordability and stock. But we do keep wondering, what else is there to the story? To what degree, for example, do short-term rentals contribute to this crisis? Well, the answer, it depends what side of the table you're sitting on. In studio, we have a table with Airbnb hosts and renters. We also have Armenian Elysian, the economist, backstage listening in. So we're going to have a conversation and try to sort this out. Come with us. Hey, everybody, how you doing? Good. Okay. Christian, Samantha, Shuni, Brendan, thanks for being with us. Can we just start off with a bit of a gut check here? Hand up if you think the answer is yes to the question, short-term rentals are contributing to the housing crisis. Okay. Well, maybe I shouldn't entirely be surprised.
Okay, so already pretty divisive. Two people think that it is contributing to the housing crisis. Two people think it isn't. I think that it's pretty irrefutable that Airbnb is contributing to the housing crisis. Like, economists have literally measured this. The thing is, it's such a small impact. There's a study where it's like for every I'm going to butcher the numbers, but it's something to the effect of like for every 1,000 new listings on short-term rental, it makes like a fraction of 1% of a difference in rent costs. So the reality is, like, in my opinion, it's pretty irrefutable just looking at the data, looking at the numbers, that short-term rentals do play a role in the housing crisis. But I would stipulate that, like, I would at least assert that it's such an insignificant role that it plays that it's certainly not where energy ought to be focused when it comes to solving that problem. So, anywho.
In that both of you are tenants right now. So, Christian, your body language suggests there's no way you think it's part of the problem.
Definitely not. I think I'm a landlord and a short-term operator, so I see both sides of the story. I think we should be responsible for the housing crisis. 5-6 years ago, when I got into the industry of short-term, somebody said, let's put an Airbnb, make money. So I got in, I'm like, oh, wow, I was like $2,000 a rent. Now I'm making $5,000-$6,000 a month. I'm like, not only am I able to cover all expenses, but have a better quality of life.
And what about the
Let's go short-term rental. Yeah, you could definitely make way more income. So quality of life goes up when you're renting short-term, and a whole bunch of other benefits to short-term renting. Not having to deal with evictions, not as much property damage, all sorts of great stuff.
Places that you rent out as long-term rentals, are they going to stay in long-term rentals?
For the time being, yes. But slowly I will be converting everything to short-term rentals.
Okay, so how does that land with the tenants in the house here? It's really hard to grasp the crushing reality of how expensive and limited it is. Like 5 months, I thought every month average rent for places looking at go up and up and up.
Because you had a bit of a rough going.
Yeah. Everything in our neighborhood was their triple rent, but we had to move out. We were asked to, and we found a place. It was 5.
I'm gonna throw a flag on the play and say that, like, I understand as a renter, the cost going up. It's like, yeah, it kind of sucks, but that's just the reality. Like, that's not because of Airbnb. Like, correlation doesn't equal causation. And so it's not because of Airbnb. The reality is it's because the government handed out a ton of money during the pandemic. And now we're dealing with inflation because the government has to print a whole bunch of money to keep up with stuff. So it's like, yeah, it sucks, but like, that's the reality. Like, these people may have been people that benefited from some of the handouts, stuff like that. And so like, it's just a reality. Like, and I'm all for helping out the disenfranchised, helping out people who need more. Like, I'm not the type of person, just myself personally, who tends to complain a whole lot about taxes. Like, it's just a reality. And I think it's like, it's totally valid to help out our fellow citizens and our fellow human beings. But it's not because of Airbnb that your rent is going up. It's because of inflation. It's because interest rates are going up, and landlords have to increase the rent in order to keep up with that, because otherwise they're just going to not have any money. Like, they're going to have to sell their property. They're going to go bankrupt. Like, there's just no real way around that.
Units in a building, a small building, each 4-bedroom. We actually offered 6 months in advance, $24,000. And despite offering that, we got rejected. We found out the competing bid was a person who offered to lease all 5-6 units, and they're turning it into Airbnb rentals.
Which is sick for a landlord, because it means that they don't have to deal with like renting out a whole bunch of different units to different people. Now, there's also additional risk in doing that as a landlord, because if this person miscalculated and they can't actually keep their business afloat, then now all of a sudden all of your units are going to be vacant at once. So I don't necessarily recommend doing that if you're the landlord in this position, but I can understand why they did it, because they were probably struggling to keep up with their mortgage payments, because a lot of people bought properties that they really shouldn't have because they can't afford them, and they were, not cash flowing super well. So, I mean, fair enough. Like, 6 months rent up front for one unit, it doesn't actually solve the problem. Like, it doesn't actually help that landlord get out of the spot that they're in. If they had all their units vacant, who wouldn't want to go with the person who can solve that problem right away?
If this keeps happening, I'm going to move out of the city for sure, but potentially move out of the country.
We're in a situation with housing shortage in pretty much every city across Canada. I don't think you can really afford, at least all the tenants can afford, for any of that housing to be given up to a kind of superfluous cause. I mean, I totally understand it helps you live a better quality of life, but if that comes at the expense of other people being able to afford to live in sort of a basic standard of living, then I think that is problematic.
But why is that Christian's responsibility, right? Like, you say superfluous, you might say, hey, that's my income.
But then it's like, okay, so then should we turn every shopping mall into housing? Right? Because like shopping for clothing, like for nice clothing, luxury goods, like every luxury shopping mall, that's just superfluous. So like, should the owners of those properties not be able to make money? Like, that's kind of one of the pillars of capitalism that we're talking about here. And you're talking about uprooting that. Like, that's a pretty drastic shift away from the way things are going. I think, again, I understand the struggle of not seeing a good other option, but there certainly are other much better options that solve the problem more effectively than just saying, hey, look, you shouldn't be able to make money in a capitalistic way.
Okay. Why does he have to take that on?
So I think at some point it comes down to sort of like personal morals and ethics. I wouldn't be looking to sort of exploit something that I view as a basic human right. Everyone should have a right to housing. For a long time, landlords have done long-term rentals, and it's made them plenty of money. So I'd like to update here actually 8 months. I'm glad.
And again, I think that where I understand where he's coming from, and I think that to a certain extent, again, it just totally depends on your own like political views. I'm not trying to overly politicize this video, but I think that the argument of, hey, housing is a basic human right or need, and that we should provide housing to people that need it, I think is totally fair to believe that. I think, like, honestly, I want to live in a world where people have housing and have their basic needs met, and we can all be happy and love one another and everything else. But I don't think that the responsibility for that falls on one individual within the system. I don't think it's fair to paint this guy as like the cause for that. I think it's like, no, we have to make a systemic change here if we want to make a change. So it's got to be the government, or it's got to be someone stepping in and going, hey, we're going to make it easier to build affordable housing. We're going to remove some of the red tape and the bureaucracy around like trying to get housing built so that we can actually build more homes and house these people, rather than further restricting what property owners can do with their property, which hasn't been working so far. Let's just open it up and make it so that we can actually just have enough housing to go around, and have enough housing so that people can rent it short term, do what they want with it. I think, again, it's one of those things where fundamentally I believe that actions flow where incentives flow. So if you put the right incentives in place, then landlords will actually see a reason to have long-term rentals. But right now, it's like, it's so challenging to be a long-term rental landlord because you're dealing with bad tenants that you can't get out of the property without a multi-month eviction process. There's no real accountability to those bad tenants where, that landlord is now just high and dry out of their money. money and they're taking on big risk. So it's like, why would they bother doing that? And then suddenly no one's going to buy real estate if they can't actually profit from it. Like, why would you go through the hassle of putting your money at stake, taking on financial risk, taking on financial stress, if there's no payoff at the end of the day, if you can't actually profit from it the way that you want to, and that you're only going to be met with more headache when it comes to evictions, damages, all these other things. Like, there has to be an upside there. There just has to be.
Without a tenant paying rent, 8 months I'll be paying out of my pocket and my quality of life. Whether I cannot take like down on vacation and have to stress, work overtime. This is, I think, a big reason why people are switching to short-term rentals, because if you're on Airbnb and you're after checkout, your reservation is no longer there. It is for when the police comes, you're trespassing, you're out the same minute.
I feel like you might have empathy at both sides of the table here. I do. So in Calgary, we have a townhouse that we rent, and we have a wonderful renter there, and it gives us peace of mind. Prior to us starting our Airbnb, we had rented it to someone that actually damaged our property and had to put in money to get it back to a regular state. So we thought, you know what, this is a great opportunity for us to try Airbnb, and it really is. It does give us that peace of mind that we are protected when there is a situation that we might not be able to collect from our renter.
We did reach out to Airbnb because mostly it is such a huge player. They maintain that 53% of their hosts are a bit like you, and that they use the platform strictly to deal with the rising costs.
That's it. So with the variable mortgage rates that are going up, the prices go up there, our condo fees are
big time.
So for us to really just be able to kind of have that offset, it's quite a nice advantage.
It is really hard when we think of housing as an investment commodity we distance it from the reality of it as shelter. It's a basic need for people, and we kind of forget the human aspect of it. I think that's a really big issue.
Well, I have to disagree, because I try to be a spirit and honest with my tenants and everything. If there's any changes, I will give them a good amount of dollars, or whatever the problem is, I will talk to them. I wouldn't be just one of those, get out, let's do it. But I'm not sure, you are not more profitable in a better position because you want a property as a rental property. 10 years ago, before interest rate hikes, before prices went bananas.
Then why do it?
Because the long-term growth you're hoping for the long-term growth of the unit. And so it is a financial. But for you to say that.
Right, but there's nothing wrong with it being financially beneficial. Like, in order to justify putting the money into it and taking that risk, there has to be financial upside, right? The better solution here would be that the people renting can actually afford to buy. And the only way that we're going to be able to make that possible is by increasing the supply of housing, because there's just so much demand right now for housing and there's very little supply in comparison. That is just economics 101. That means the prices are going to go up. So it's not affordable for these guys renting to be able to buy, which is the fundamental problem. But in order to do that, we just have to increase supply. We have to make it easier for people to build affordable housing, for people to build more housing in general. Right now, it's a bit of a nightmare with all the red tape that there is in Canada. And so again, it's just like, I understand the mentality here. I understand the stress and the frustration. I just think it's misdirected on the part of the renters. Guys, just want to take a quick break here to say that for those of you watching who want to build cash flow and long-term wealth by purchasing Airbnbs and short-term rental properties, there's a link in the description right down below for a free training that'll walk you through my exact strategy for investing successfully in Airbnbs. Now, if you're not ready to actually buy properties and you want to get started managing other people's properties on Airbnb, the same way I got started, and build a full-time income managing other people's properties, there's actually another free training linked in the description down below as well that'll be a really great fit for you. So whether you want to invest in short-term rental properties and actually build amazing cash flow and long-term wealth by acquiring the assets, buying the properties themselves, or you're looking to earn a full-time income managing other people's properties on Airbnb, we've got some awesome trainings that are linked in the description down below that'll definitely help you out. When you sign up for the trainings, we're also going to send you a few other tools and resources completely for free just to help you get started. Again, the links to sign up are in the description down below, and both trainings and all the tools are completely free. So make sure to register for the trainings, links in the description down below.
You have equity in the housing, you cannot refinance or be called. I can have $1 million in my house right now. I cannot take it out because I cannot qualify thanks to the interest rates or whatever. Now, for the rental investment to play where people start reaping the benefits of real estate immediately. Start with government, and not only do the government, but some are responsible to fix the government job. I pay enough taxes that they should be doing their job. Why won't they decrease the time that a builder needs to wait for permits to build a 50-foot story? Because if that's the case, Toronto was one of the longest wait times around the world, I believe, for them to get permits to build. That's not my problem. Unfortunately, I'm not here for charity.
Well, I mean, we figured this out. I mean, in this city, like 50%-ish of the population rents. And so with such a low vacancy rate, it's lowest in this country. It's been in some 20 years. I think it's like roughly 1% in Halifax.
Yeah. I've been there for around 3 years in the same building. And I know in the time that I've been there, the market price for my unit has effectively doubled. And the most recent landlord took over, he sort of approached me at the beginning and made it clear that his intention was to turn my unit into an Airbnb. And I'm in a 3-unit building. All of the other units are Airbnbs. So absolutely, you feel it's kind of put me in a position where I feel like I have to be an extra good 10 to hedge my bets. I should take that little extra step. I take care of the garbage for the Airbnbs that are in, I take the bins out and whatever.
I actually think I'll never let you go. If I had to try to in your own tenants there that does fall out, I'll never let you go. I'll never help you rent also because I think you're like such a massive asset to that building. But on the other end is if you're owning single family homes or condos, when my payment is going from $2,500 to $3,600, condo fees are going up every year, and the property taxes are going up. That just, we cannot expect tenants to say, hey, I've been here for 20 years, so I'll be $900 here. Well, the whole world is moving. You're paying more for your bread and food, your gas, why are you paying more for your rent, and you expect me to fork that money, right?
I do want.
Yeah, because again, you got to remember, like in real estate investing, if you're doing long-term rental, your income is relatively fixed. In Canada and a lot of different areas, they cap the amount that you can increase rent every year. Like it's actually illegal to increase your rent more than a certain small percentage each year to keep it affordable for the people renting. But it's okay for the lenders, for the banks to increase your mortgage rate, right? It's okay for your property taxes to double in a given year. So your cost basis is going up and up and up and up and up, but your income is only slightly increasing every single year. So every single year, you're just losing more and more and more and more margin, right? And like this guy's saying, you can't pull any of your equity out because you can't qualify for the new mortgage a lot of the time. So it's like, yeah, it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Right? Like it's a fundamentally pretty broken system, which is why we're seeing what we're seeing.
To ask though, like these issues that you have had, would you say that they're a majority of your tenants or a minority?
Lucky, I've had a minority. However, damages from tenants and me being out of pocket has been pretty consistent after dealing with the property.
It's just, because I feel like I hear this kind of thing a lot from landlords. I'm not saying there are bad tenants in the world, they're in the minority. And so I think it's kind of blown out of proportion that, I need to use Airbnb as a crutch because every tenant there's too much risk. You're profiting off of this housing as a business, the cost of doing business.
But again, it's just like, if you introduce that additional risk, why would someone take it on when they have the option not to? It's just incentives, right? If you have that risk, sure, it might be a low risk of me getting a bad tenant that's going to financially destroy me because they're going to take a long time to get evicted and they're going to damage the heck out of the property. But I don't know about you. I don't know about this guy, but like if he had money saved up that he's worked really hard for to get ahead, with rent costs being the way they are, cost of living being what it is, like he's working hard to get ahead. Is he going to put that money at stake and go, you know what, I'm going to rent long term, even though there's a risk that I'm going to lose everything, that it's going to undo the years of hard work that I've done and set me back on my financial future? Am I going to take that risk for no good reason when I don't have to, when there's a better option out there where I can rent short term and never have to deal with an eviction, have $3 million of protection against any damages? Like if I can mitigate that risk, why would I not? It would be crazy to not do that. So to say that, oh yeah, it's a small risk, well, it's a small percentage chance of a really big impact. So again, like you'd have to be very risk tolerant to look at that and go, yeah, I'm willing to risk that. That would just be crazy.
I went personally bankrupt because of the mortgage attempt is unacceptable to anyone else. I'm saying if I didn't have the means to cover the mortgage, guess what? Right?
Man, this guy is like in my brain.
If goes default, gets on your bureau, you have to declare bankruptcy. So that minority, that one tenant can ruin your life for good.
My point is that that hasn't happened to you yet, and it probably won't happen to you. And I don't think that it's because you're using Airbnb. It's because, generally speaking, you're in a profitable business model and you're going to be just fine. I totally get it's not your response.
It's not a profitable enough business model, though. Like long-term rentals are not profitable enough that you can afford to just have a tenant that sours the whole thing. Like you said, it can literally financially ruin you, which is why long-term rentals are so risky the way most people do it, and why we see a lot of people going over to short-term rental wanting to do it. I don't know that this guy's actually run the numbers and seen how much capital you have to put in just to buy a property and what the actual margins are. It seems like he's speaking outside of his kind of domain of expertise because he's saying it's profitable, but I doubt that he's ever actually looked at the numbers and seen how thin the margins are with long-term rental properties.
Responsibility to kind of solve all the social woes of Canada with housing. We also should talk about this with some empathy for the people that might get forced out in this way, because in a lot of cases it's not their fault either.
Okay, so this is where we're almost stuck, and this is where we need some help. So we're taking take a breath, and get our read it. Okay, you are sucking out stock. You're sucking it out faster than it can be built. Do you see any model anywhere that offers a solution?
Okay, so we've established that we understand the problem here. It's very personal. We need some solutions. We need to reality check. Perfect timing. Our media needs to help us out here. I know we were listening and watching. What struck you?
How amazingly engaging this conversation is. You all are bringing such an important aspect of something that is a problem for Canadians from coast to coast to coast.
So when you say problem, can you give us a sense of where Canada sits compared to the rest of the world? Like how big of a problem is housing affordability?
Well, there are two features that are really quite unique for Canada. Number one is that the Canadian population has grown faster than any other big nation in the last year. It's been just a bonanza of more people coming to the country. And that's great news for a lot of reasons, but really challenging when you don't build housing at the pace that we've been permitting and welcoming people to come to the country. And the second part is that of the 37 richest countries in the world, Canada is right last bottom of the list in terms of social housing. We have disinvested through governments. I mean, to Christian's point about what is government's role in all of this, in every other country, governments are responsible for building a bigger stock of affordable housing. We cannot expect the market to do all of the heavy lifting on affordability. On the other hand, we cannot let the market go to the Wild West in terms of driving up prices because it's good for you guys. That's like I'm really torn in these stories, that's for sure.
Well, in terms of short-term rentals, though, I mean, anecdotally, it can feel, if you're a tenant, it can feel like they are adding to the housing crisis. Do you know, for the time I was first asked to be part of this, and I started looking at the data, we added 2,000 long-term listings in Toronto. That is less than a month. 2,000 new listings have been added to Airbnb. I mean, we're sucking out, we cannot build fast enough. We're taking too long to build. You guys are sucking out quality. You are sucking out stock. You're sucking it out faster than it can be built. We have a problem in a city like Toronto, where rent went up by 20% for a bachelor unit. Rent went up by 16% for 1-bedroom and 3-bedroom units compared to a year ago.
Yeah, but you got to ask yourself, again, like that is a symptom. It's not the root cause. You got to ask yourself, if people suddenly started transitioning over to short-term rentals in a very accelerated way, why? Why did they do that, right? Well, the answer is because housing went way up, right? Like the cost of that, the cost basis of owning that property went way up because so many people were in variable rate mortgages. And because we gave out all these handouts and we have all this inflation, now we have to have this increasing mortgage rates, right? So like, we can't act like this just happened out of nowhere and it suddenly 2,000 Airbnb, like 2,000 landlords just one day woke up and said, I'm going to put my property on Airbnb instead of long-term rental. Like the reality is they did that for a reason, and we have to address the root cause and treat it as a whole system. We can't look at anything in isolation. It's like waking up and going, well, I'm fat today, I'm overweight. You know, it's not because I didn't work out, didn't exercise, and ate wrong for the last 2 years. It's just because I'm fat today. Like, no, there's a cause for everything. We have to reverse engineer it and figure out what the cause is so that we can address it, not just be dealing with the symptom, right? Like, if you just go, I'm fat and I don't know why, then, you know, you go get surgery, get it removed, and you're just going to end up back in the exact same place. You've got to actually adopt better eating habits. Like, so that's kind of, again, analogy I'm trying to draw, but like, you've got to actually look at the root cause of these things.
Rents would not be escalating as quickly. Just on Airbnb alone, there are 15,000 long-term rentals available today. So if you were somehow by some magic wand able to convert some of those into legit long-term rentals, right? A year, 2 years, like people do when they need a place to live, that would add so much stock that it would reduce the pressure on how much rents are rising. So you might be making your money, you might be making your money, which is totally legit, totally understandable, has this ripple effect from real estate markets throughout the country, especially in major markets, but also in secondary markets. So you can see where the tension is coming in.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you tell us that in the unit you lived in, you have an Airbnb, but you also have another
long-term rental property, which is our townhouse, and then we have our basement suite in our home.
Right. And the long-term tenant, did I get it right that once that person leaves who you like, you see the advantages of moving to Airbnb?
So when we first started, it really was to offset our expenses. Sure. And you do see the benefits of it. And I'm not saying that I would evict anyone or so on, but I am looking at I want to pay down my mortgage. I want to, be able to get ahead in a way. And so yes, it would be attractive to do so.
Yeah, I think if it's within your primary residence, I think it's maybe a different story. But I think it's when it's a secondary property as a tenant, of course I'm biased, but it ends up a longer market.
When Airbnb was launched in 2007, it was precisely to help people offset their costs and manage who they had in the house and have a little bit more control. It has gone out of control.
Everybody that's been in variable fixed rates during the pandemic, they better expect a 40 to 50% increase in their payment. We keep forgetting about that. That's the reason why rents keep going up.
100%. And I'm not arguing with you that if the money is there to be made, it's like handing for a baby. Why wouldn't you take it? That's why we need regulations. Brendan is also right. You're a businessman. That's how you're describing what you're doing. You make your money through real estate. That has risks.
Again, I agree with you. Why instead of them raising 3.5%, 4% in a year's time, why do they not raise it 0.25% of the time so people can adjust their living expenses and everything?
What are you going to do about their wages? Their wages. Like, they can do it 4% at a time, but their wages don't go up. What are you going to do about it? Look, it isn't somebody else's problem, is my point. It is our problem.
If we can talk about regulations just for a moment, I think if you're reading the news and you may have heard people talk about Quebec, right? Quebec is trying new regulations with Airbnb. But what are those regulations and are they going to work?
So Quebec's new introduction is to make people like Christian more accountable for how he's running his business. He needs to register, and he needs to prove that the people that they're getting are legitimately staying there long term. I have to say, this isn't about good operators and bad operators. There's not enough places for Canadians to live.
I think the solution has to be that if we have housing that's planned, zoned, designed, built for housing, that shouldn't be turned into hotel stock.
And do you see any model anywhere that offers a solution?
The only model that exists anywhere is in New York City. It is in places like Quebec that is really cracking down, and we could actually bring it further along in a place like Toronto, is to really be much more ruthless about your business model to prevent, like you are right, it's not being regulated and enforced enough. Why are there any multiple listings now? But that is the way we have to go. Sometimes the most absolutely blindingly simple business.
Yeah, I just like so wholeheartedly disagree with this whole thing, because the reality is, if you do that, then suddenly it's no longer affordable for it's no longer beneficial, advantageous for people to own long-term rentals. The only reason if you own a long-term rental and you can't keep up because you're not allowed to increase your rent enough, so you can't keep up with the cost of owning it, then the only advantage to maintaining that real estate, to holding on to it, is the appreciation of the property. Right? Because you can't reap the reward of the equity, the principal paid on the mortgage. You can't actually access that money because a lot of time you just can't qualify for a refinance if you have $1 million worth of equity in your home. No bank is going to lend to you at the current rates and give you access to that capital. So you're just banking on it one day selling for more, but that's not a guarantee. So why on earth would someone put up, let's say, $100,000 or $200,000 of their hard-earned money and agree to make monthly payments of several $1,000s with the hope of getting a renter in there and take all of that risk on with no guarantee of an upside? Like, people just aren't going to do it. It's not going to happen. And so, like, you just got to deal with the affordability, like the margin in there. You've got to add more supply. If you can't incentivize people adding more supply and make it, again, advantageous economically. Like, the reality is we live in a capitalistic society in Canada here. Like, we believe in capitalism, so you've got to incentivize capitalism. You've got to make it profitable and realistic for people to build new stock if you want to add new stock. It's not a matter of cutting off capitalism, cutting off the free market, regulating it. It's a matter of enabling it more. Now, again, like, that's just my take on it. I understand that some people will disagree, but to me, it just seems crazy that we're looking at a problem that fundamentally has to do with the supply and demand of housing. And if we look at that, we identify that demand is increasing because more people are coming to Canada, which is great, and we want to keep supporting that. But supply can't keep up. And you go, why can't supply keep up? Oh, it's because of bureaucratic red tape, government regulation, not like just total bureaucratic inefficiency. And so we go, okay, let's add more red tape to try to solve the problem that red tape is creating. It's so counterintuitive to me that I can't understand how someone could possibly look this way. It's just I think really what's happening here is just a sunken cost fallacy, where it's like we're on this path. So like regulation, oh shoot, it caused issues. Let's add more of it. Let's try to patchwork it together. But eventually you're just going to realize that like all this patchwork of restricting the free market and the flow of commerce, it's just not going to work. Now suddenly we don't actually have a free market, and we've got all the downsides, none of the upsides. Like, I just think it's just kicking the can further down the road.
Decision that makes perfect sense for an individual business turns out to be suicide for an economy. It's good for you, it's good for you, it's terrible for them, and they're the future, not you. It's pretty eye-popping.
Christian Samantha should be.
Yeah, again, I just totally disagree with that. But interesting. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Let me know in the comment section down below. I can't imagine being a landlord who's got rising costs and is going to take some kind of a moral high ground and just lose tons of money and hold on to that real estate just so that they can, like, just so they can have a moral high ground. They're going to just lose money month after month, dealing with the rising costs, not being able to increase their rent, take on all this financial risk just so that they can give housing to someone else and do a good deed for someone else. That's just a huge burden, I think, to put on someone. If someone wants to do that, that's great. But I think that guilting someone and pressuring them into doing that and telling them that's their duty when we pay the taxes that we do in Canada and we have the systems that we do in Canada, like, that to me is just is just crazy. But that's just my thoughts. I want to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let me know if you liked this video, if you got value from it, if you thought it was interesting, or even if you didn't, just hit that like button. I really appreciate it. Helps me out a lot with growing this channel. If you want to stay up to date with the 2 new videos we post every single week, make sure you subscribe to the channel as well. With all that said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.